Hi, I'm Kayla Caruana.
I'm Karen Erickson.
And we're from IG Private Wealth Management. We co-run a financial planning practice together. We're both certified financial planners. So today we're going to talk about estate planning. We are not lawyers. However, we work closely with lawyers and accountants and other professionals so that we're able to create a holistic view on financial planning.
Estate planning is a part of your financial plan, and we want to make sure that when you eventually pass away, that your assets and what you own will properly roll over to who you want to for your beneficiaries and your spouse, etc. So there's three essential documents. One is your will. That's what happens after you pass away. And then the second one is your enduring power of attorney. That allows somebody to have official responsibility to take care of any financial affairs that you have while you may not have capacity. And then the third piece is having a healthcare directive called a representation agreement in British Columbia. That allows people to make healthcare decisions for you when you aren't able to make them for yourself.
And a lawyer will help you walk through all of these documents and getting those documents in place, and we're able to solidify those plans that your lawyer comes up with. Who should have a will? Well, I like to think that everyone should have a will, but unfortunately that's not the case. So what we think about is, do you have significant assets? Do you have children that need care in the event that both you and your spouse pass away? There's many kind of life triggers that would say you should probably get a will. What we'll do is we'll lean on lawyers' recommendations on the timing, but if you'd like us to kind of walk through some of what those estate planning components are and the questions that you're going to get asked, we're happy to help and then support you through that process. A lot of the harder questions come from what lines up with your estate plan, so the beneficiary designations, and then ensuring that you have enough money to inside of the estate to pay tax bills. Those are also things that we help with.
Right. So I think it's really important to talk about a will. You know, people who die without a will, that's called dying intestate. And what that means is that the government will have to step in and actually help you to final your affairs. So if you're not a big fan of that kind of intervention, then I'd say everyone should have a will. You can get them online now, or even better, go to a notary, or even better, go to a lawyer, depending upon your circumstance. But every single person needs a will in order to close your tax returns and your final affairs and make sure things happen correctly.
Keeping your estate planning documents up to date is critically important. So you think about material life changes like marriage or divorce or buying and selling properties, things like that. You should always review your will every 3 to 5 years. The other thing that's important to note is that if there is some significant events that happen in your life, whether it's moving provinces, to have that will checked in the province that you currently reside. In British Columbia, we have very strict rules and regulations, and in order to have your estate planning documents to be valid, you'll need to have those documents checked over by a British Columbia lawyer.
So for your registered accounts, for your RSPs and your life insurance and your RIFs, you can use the beneficiary designation in order to roll those investments over to your beneficiary.
The tax-free savings account also has beneficiary designations, but it also has another component called the successor holder. The person that you can name as the successor holder is only your spouse, and in the event of your death, it would roll over from your tax-free savings account to your spouse's.
When talking about beneficiary designations for your RSP and your RIF, you have a spousal rollover provision included. So what that means is that if one spouse passes away, their RSP or their RIF will automatically roll into the other spouse's RIF and RSP. That helps to defer the tax position that you need to do upon the last person's death during the first person's rollover.
And if you have an RRSP and a RIF upon the last person passing away, as an example, that becomes 100% taxable upon the last person's death. This is what we call the big tax, because people spend a lot of time worried about what's called probate and not about the big tax, which is the income tax side. People go out of their way to avoid what's called probate, which we consider in estate planning to be a smaller component of the tax implications of your overall estate.
We call it the little tax.
The big tax and the little tax are things that we do want to address, but in order to look at your entire estate plan, we need to know all of the details, all of the numbers, and also the wishes. Do you want to pay tax now? Would you rather pay tax after death? Once we figure out all of that, we can actually calculate through what's called an estate needs analysis, both of those taxations, and show you exactly what that picture looks like. If you feel that your family needs a trust, it's now more important than ever to get professional guidance and advice. The rules have changed, things are starting to change, and it's really important to have guidance from a certified financial planner in conjunction with your lawyer.
When it comes to blended families, things can be a little bit more complex. I come from a blended family, and when you are married for a second time and you have children from your first marriage, you want to make sure that you're taking care of those children and not just your new spouse.
It's important to start to think about how you're going to equalize the estate, to make sure that you're including every child in the family. One thing that we talk about a lot is that when you do have a blended family, because of the complexity that it provides, you need to get a professional opinion on the strategies that are appropriate for your situation. You know, when you utilize things like the investment channels, beneficiary designations, you can utilize life insurance as an example to equalize estate. There's so many different ideas. It's finding the right one for you and your family.
And making sure that you get professional advice. So you know what, when you're with a blended family or when you're in a blended family, you should get an estate planning lawyer that's focused truly on estate planning in order to make sure that you do that correctly. And so get professional advice from your certified financial planner and your estate planning lawyer. You can add charitable giving to your estate plan and it does a wonderful job. So you have to decide to your overall financial plan, do you need the tax slips now in order to reduce your income every year? Or would you like a large tax slip to maybe help with that final estate planning tax bill? So estate planning is just one piece of an overall financial plan. There are 6 disciplines to financial planning. We want to make sure for estate planning that your assets roll over to who you want them to roll over to and be as tax efficient as possible.
When we talk about the final tax bill, that one can be easily calculated as long as you understand all of the components of your financial plan. Because you have the registered accounts that would be 100% taxable upon the last person's death, and you have the tax-free savings account, which could be tax-free but then have tax implications after death, and then you start to have things like your principal residence. There's ends up being quite a significant pot of money left over in your estate even after all the big tax and the little tax are paid. So in order to deal with that effectively, you have to know the numbers, and in order to know the numbers, you'll need to have an estate planning analysis so that you know what numbers you're dealing with.
And when it comes to charitable giving, it's more about leaving a legacy. If you have been giving to charities throughout your lifetime, then that might be something you want to do for the long term that will leave a legacy. So you can have things like make a lump sum donation where you get a tax slip for a lump sum that's maybe put through your will. So you leave, X amount of money to a certain charity, you'll get a tax receipt, which will help offset some of those final tax bills. But you also may want to consider charitable giving during your lifetime. So you can set up a personal foundation, you can add money to that and decide what kind of programs you'd like to support in order to make sure that your legacy will live on for generations to come. When it comes to estate planning, you have to be able to make sure that your executor and your loved ones can figure out what your wishes are. So it's important to know that you have a document that says, this is where my investments are and my insurance. This is where a safety deposit box is. Here's where the key is. We got to make sure we know the safe code and all of the pieces that need to be dealt with during estate planning. You have a footprint out there that talks about, you have your credit cards and your lines of credits and all of those things. They need to actually be unwound. So making sure that someone, we do that for our clients, but making sure that someone knows all the pieces that you have out there, whether it's credit or bank accounts or investments, to make sure that we know where they are so that everything can be closed appropriately and wound up for your estate planning.
And if you have been an executor, you know that this can be very tiresome and you're already going through a lot of emotional turmoil. So one thing that we recommend, and if you'll email us or DM us on social media, we can give you a personal records organizer to help you get started. It's a fillable PDF, it's super easy. One of the things that we get asked a lot is, how do we deal with digital assets in estate planning? This has become quite a controversial and expanding topic. It changes quite often. There is certain wording in your estate planning documents that you can have so that you are able to have someone deal with those things upon your passing. You deal with that with your lawyer and make sure that that wording is in there. Some of the digital assets, what we find is an issue is that technically you're not allowed to give your password to anyone. So how are you able to deal with, potentially as an executor or a power of attorney, with all of these issues? Every year things are starting to change, but just having a record of everything that you have and every digital asset that you have is a good place to start.
As you can see, estate planning is a very complex issue.
And we have barely scratched the surface. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. We'll be happy to address them.
If you have something that you would not like to share, but you'd like to have a personal conversation, you can email us for a free consultation and we'll just talk about your situation directly. So thanks for tuning in. I'm Karen.
And I'm Kayla, and we'll see you next time when we're going to talk about insurance.